This year we celebrate 50 years of St Gerard's Church, Carlingford. We celebrate not the bricks and the mortar of this church building, but the lives of the good people who have built and become the church with a capital C. Many of their stories are being told in a series in our parish newsletter, including this month our pioneering parishioners Gordon and Margaret Floyd. But there is also a dark chapter in our parish's history which needs to be acknowledged. To not do so is to see only a half-truth, to look through rose-coloured glasses. And that chapter is that decades ago there was sexual abuse of minors by a priest here in this parish. As I say this, I just direct you to the description below where there are links to various resources in the church and beyond. If anything I'm saying now causes you concern or upset, please make use of those resources if you can. That this has happened in the past does not diminish its impact. Many of you were here in the parish at the time, or you know people who were. You know the devastation it wreaked on our parish community. You know that so many good people walked away from the church because of what occurred, and many have never come back. For those of you who've come to the parish more recently and are not aware of this, I don't want to burden you with the details, but for us to be a true parish community, it's important that we all know and acknowledge the bad as well as the good of our church, with no whispered secrets in dark corners. I'll just say the man involved was arrested and convicted. He is no longer in prison, but lives far away from the parish. He has been laicized and no longer ministers as a priest. If this man had been the only priest who had committed such a heinous crime, this would be bad enough. But what made it so devastating was that he is just one of many, far too many Catholic clergy convicted of this or similar crimes. The Catholic community had the right to expect that the priest who stood in front of them proclaiming Jesus Christ would live by his values. And that we have not always done so is the hypocrisy of which Jesus speaks so often in the Gospel. From this we cannot shy away, and for this, on behalf of my fellow clergy, I apologise unreservedly. It may help for us to have some context, and I speak now not of our parish's case in particular, but of the cumulative effect of which clerical abuse in the church has caused. We can speak of three kinds of victims and survivors of abuse. The first is the primary victim, the person directly affected. I know there are people here in this church and people watching this video who have been the victims of such abuse, not just in the church, but also in other places where you should also have been safe. To you, I want to apologise for the times when you have not been listened to, not been believed. To use the image of the gospel, too many people, too many victims have been the Lazarus left at the gate while the unaffected walk past oblivious. We now listen to those brave people who come forward to speak of what has been done to them. Then there are the secondary victims. For every primary victim, there are family members and close friends who feel both the impact of the original crime and the effects of addiction and self-harm, which we now know can be the result of childhood abuse even years down the track. Many more of you have experienced this in people you love. And finally, there are the tertiary victims, which includes everybody who feels betrayed and disillusioned by what has happened in the church to which they belong. That includes all of us here at the church to some extent, and includes those who have already walked away, unable to bear it any longer. If you are clinging to your faith by your fingertips today, please hang on. And to all of you who courageously commit yourself to your faith in your church despite such betrayals, thank you. Let's look at how the scandal of sexual abuse affects us. Imagine drawing a box, and in this box is our worldview, in which our beliefs make sense of our experiences. Life is meaningful and coherent within this box. But then something happens outside the box, outside our worldview. It could be any experience of tragedy or personal suffering, or in this case, the cumulative effect of sexual abuse by clergy over so many years. This doesn't fit with what we know and believe, so to make sense of it, we might do one of three things. The first is we can simply deny this new phenomenon, push it away, because it doesn't fit our worldview. We suppress or we cover up. This was a response of our church for decades. Surely not, we said. A priest couldn't, we said. But we now know better, and to continue to do so is myopic and a form of fundamentalism which does us no good and harms others. The second response is we can shift our worldview away from what we once believed to the new experience of suffering and tragedy. Here we can no longer believe, as we did before, and now crime, abuse and evil become the centre and the focus. We can no longer believe, as we once did before, that the church is good, or there is a good and loving God who cares for us. Faith is shattered, and people walk away from the church. But with courage, there is a third response. We can expand our worldview to include both the bad and the good, the old and the new experience. We draw a bigger box, and we somehow come to grips with the paradox that the church and its leaders are both good and sinful. We wrestle with the contradiction, but in the process, our hearts are stretched and enlarged by the work of the Holy Spirit, and we learn to accept both the good and the bad within ourselves. We become more able to embrace life as it comes to us, with both its blessings and its challenges. And this is my hope for us, that through this pain we may grow stronger and wiser. But how will we rid ourselves of the scourge of clerical abuse of minors? We absolutely must stamp out the cultures, the beliefs and the behaviours of the church which allowed this abuse to happen with such infernal frequency. I offer you some hope. Firstly, church policies have changed. If an allegation of misconduct is made against a priest, he is now immediately stood aside from ministry while investigation takes place. Priests are no longer given the benefit of the doubt. The protection of our children and the prevention of further harm takes priority over the reputation of the priest or of the church. Secondly, for the past 25 years, men seeking to enter seminary have been assessed by a psychologist to screen for any pathologies which could dispose a man towards sexual abuse. The bar for admission is higher than ever, and our need for many priests does not trump our need for good priests. Thirdly, in decades past, all discussion of sexuality was taboo in seminaries, but for the last 25 years or so, seminarians now undertake serious psychosexual formation for healthy celibate living and sexuality. And I'm hopeful that this formation has given my generation of priests the tools of emotional intelligence we need to create a safe church for all. And lastly, the focus of the whole church has now moved to safeguarding, which is the proactive prevention of harm in all its forms to our children and vulnerable people. This is a work in progress as we take on the collective challenge, all of us, clergy and laity, of creating a safe church when we no longer have a blinding log in our eyes, but can again see clearly to proclaim the love of Jesus Christ and to be his good news to the world. That we celebrate this safeguarding month now in September every year is an example of our commitment from the bishop down to be a safe church now and into the future. And our intention here in this parish, guided by the Parish Pastoral Council, is to have a memorial plaque established somewhere in St Gerard's Church, acknowledge that there has been sexual abuse here in our community of faith, but that we now stand with and in solidarity with the survivors and commit ourselves to a better future. We can do better, we must do better, and we will do better. Together we can be the kind of church in which all people are kept safe and which nobody is left lying at the gate. Together we can be the kind of church which Christ calls us to be and which we celebrate here in St Gerard's this year.